The icy grip of fear tightened around the hearts of the Arctic Rose crew as twilight bled across the Bering Sea. But little did they know about the tragedy that was about to happen. 15 souls vanished in a single sickening plunge. No frantic Mayday, no stress call, just the vast ocean whose cold depths hide bitter truth. The story depicts real-life dangers and may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. On April 1, 2001, a battle-scarred trawler, the Arctic Rose, a mere 28 meters of defiance, fought its way across 600 kilometers of the churning Bering Sea. The unforgiving Alaskan coast loomed ahead, a stark reminder of the raw power they challenged. This wasn't the first storm Arctic Rose endured. Countless battles with the ocean were etched into their hull like a weathered warrior's scars. Captain Dave Rundle, a man whose face mirrored sea's relentless fury, was nervously scanning the horizon, sensing upcoming disaster. 2 grueling days had finally produced a 10-ton bounty, a hard-won victory in this unforgiving arena. But the crew knew they still had a lot to catch up with. The season had been a struggle, and their nets far less productive than usual. This haul and abundance of prized flatfish gave them a false sense of security, and despite all the warnings, the captain decided to roll the dice once again. The Arctic Rose, once a shrimper, was launched in the warm waters of the Mississippi, holding the weight of countless modifications, a patchwork of welded steel and enlarged ballast space. The vessel wasn't built for extreme conditions of the Bering Sea, yet under Captain Rundle's command, the Rose had become a prime example of his crew's ingenuity and their desperate attempts to take every buck. Beneath an ominous April sky, the Arctic Rose wrestled with the churning Bering Sea. Tonight's mission was clear: hold position and redeploy the gear as soon as daylight struck. They called it jogging, monotonous back-and-forth maneuvers through the heavy seas, a well-worn routine for the weathered captain. While Rundle boasted a seasoned captain's intuition for finding the elusive bounty, some of his crew members were complete opposites. Jeff Mink was one of them. This was Jeff's first taste of life at sea, a journey fueled by the dream of becoming a veterinarian rather than seasoned fisherman. He grew up surrounded by troubled parents. Soon he found solace in alcohol, which led to many clashes with his superiors. Harnessing all his strengths, he managed to overcome all crises and emerge victorious. His recent promotion to deckhand, a step above the drudgery of the slime line, was a small victory in this harsh environment. Meanwhile, Kerry Egan, the first mate, stood ready for the overwatch, which served him as a relief. He was a hardened sailor, and when it comes to decision-making, he always relied on the captain's boldness. Down in the cramped quarters of the Arctic Rose, the crew, lured by a decent paycheck, struggled in inhuman discomfort. Dormitories and fish processing sections were not detached, causing some crew members to vomit in the middle of the night when inhaling disgusting combinations of fresh and previously processed fish leftovers. Captain Rundle, ever the strategist, used the radio waves as a lifeline. His voice crackled through the static, calling out John Nelson, first mate on their sister ship, the Alaskan Rose, not far away from their position. "John, it's Dave here on the Arctic Rose. Any updates on the haul?" "Not bad, Dave. Weather's been a bit rough, though. A little choppy here, too. Almost done for today. You heard anything about tonight's forecast?" "Haven't heard yet, Dave. Be careful out there." With the day's work complete, a sense of weary satisfaction settled over the Arctic Rose. But as twilight painted the sky, the Bering Sea seemed to stir. A low growl echoed across the water, a harbinger of the storm's fury to come. Dave, now more agitated than ever, felt a familiar unease gnaw at him. He glanced at the barometer, the needle dipping ominously. Perhaps Nelson's concern was justified. The Bering Sea's grip tightened as midnight passed. The once calm sky turned furious, unleashing a storm. The wind howled, and the waves rose like towering giants, their icy crests reminding the crew of their fragile situation. Below decks, the engine's steady hum lulled some crew members into a false sense of security. In their cramped bunks, they dreamt of home, unaware of the brewing storm above. At the helm, First Mate Kerry Egan felt a growing unease. The Bering's familiar rhythm had become chaotic. At 3:30 a.m., the bridge alarms went off. Icy water surged through a breach, flooding the lower compartments. A scream shattered the silence below decks. Carrie's voice, filled with anxiety and command, echoed through the intercom. Crew members jolted awake, their fear growing as the reality set in. Captain Dave Rundle, asleep at the time, was violently awakened by Carrie's shouts. He rushed to the bridge, turning pale from the gravity of the situation. Years at sea had taught him to react quickly and efficiently in crises. "Carrie, report. Water's coming in fast, Dave. We've lost steering and engine power." Captain Rundle's worst fears became reality. The FV Arctic rose. Their resilient vessel was now a wounded ship adrift in a furious storm. Their only hope lays in the survival suits stored near the deck. "All hands on deck. Get your survival suits." As fear gripped the crew, tension flared between Captain Rundle and Jeff Mink. Jeff's eyes showed what was obvious: abandoning ship is not an option. "We can't just leave her, Captain. We have to save her. We can't risk our lives for a sinking ship, Mike. Our only chance is to get off while we still can." Their heated exchange underscored the desperate choices faced in the midst of crisis, as each man fought for what he believed was the right course of action. Soon they will realize they wasted precious time on the futile argument. The climb to the deck turned into a desperate struggle. The 45-knot winds battered the vessel, and 24-foot waves crashed over the deck, threatening to sweep them overboard. The crew flipped out. Some scrambled for the life raft, others froze in fear. Captain Rundle fought his way through, barking orders and trying to maintain control, but the sea was relentless. The water rose, flooding the compartments and turning their workspace into a watery grave. The fight for survival suits became a losing battle against the rising tide. By the time Captain Rundle reached the locker, the water was chest high. Donning a suit in these conditions was nearly impossible, requiring precious minutes they didn't have. The FV Arctic Rose, once a symbol of hope, was sinking fast. A final mournful sound pierced the storm. The Arctic Rose's emergency position indicating radio beacon, or EPIRB, was activated, sending a distress signal. But for the crew, it was too late. The ICC claimed the vessel, dragging it down. Completely filled with water, it was a dead weight, and in the blink of an eye, everything was over. The Arctic Rose sank. The crew, despite their agonized struggle, lost the battle. The storm raged on, indifferent to the tragedy. Miles away, the EPIRB signal reached the Coast Guard station in Kodiak, Alaska. The coordinates flashed on the screen, a silent testament to the lost vessel and its crew. Rescue efforts were swift but futile. The sea yielded no survivors, only the wreckage of the Arctic Rose, now a grim monument on the ocean floor. The Arctic Rose's distress beacon screamed, its desperate plea swallowed by the unforgiving Bering Sea. The Coast Guard sprang into action, a C-130 roaring skyward to chase the faint signal. Meanwhile, just 18 kilometers away, the sister ship Alaskan Rose received the call. Captain Nelson's voice boomed with urgency, promising rescue. However, upon reaching the scene, they found only empty survival suits bobbing on the churning waves, a horrific tableau of disaster. In a selfless act of friendship, Captain Nelson donned his suit and plunged into the icy depths. Tethered to his ship, hours crawled by in agonizing silence before Nelson emerged, his news as cold as the sea itself. Captain Rundle was gone. Despite a hopeless 2-day search, no survivors were found. The search for answers in the Arctic Rose disaster stretched from a projected 6 months to a grueling 2.5 years. Investigators dove deep, starting with the ship's final radio message and weather data. The data confirmed brutal weather and ice, a typical culprit for instability. Scrutinizing crew preparedness, they spoke with Jennifer Doyas, who confirmed Captain Rundle rigorously trained his crew on emergency procedures, including survival suit use. Next, investigators set their sights on the vessel's stability. The former crew painted a picture of the Arctic Rose, describing its tendency to roll alarmingly in rough seas, hinting at a potential stability issue. They dug up details of significant modifications, including a bulky processing plant and a hefty steel gantry added to the vessel. Despite these modifications, naval experts claimed ship seaworthiness as long as watertight hatches were secured. The sunken Arctic Rose lies 130 meters deep in the Bering Sea's icy embrace. A remotely operated vehicle, ROV, plunged into the depths to examine the wreck. The ROV revealed a gaping hatch at the stern, leading straight to the fish processing area. The breach could have allowed seawater to gush in, flooding the vessel. Interviews bolstered this theory, as crew members reportedly left this hatch open frequently. Deeper probing uncovered clogged drains, which likely worsened the flooding. This open hatch likely became a watery highway, rapidly funneling water into the engine room, causing the vessel to capsize in a flash. The Coast Guard concluded that flooding from open hatches during the storm caused the Arctic Rose to sink. In response, they implemented stricter safety standards for smaller processor boats, including mandatory alarms on watertight doors. 8 years crawled by, each one a heavy burden for the families who lost their loved ones in this tragic catastrophe. A glimmer of hope, faint but desperately clung to, flickered when human bones were found scattered on the inclement Alaskan coast. DNA testing confirmed the heartbreaking truth. It was Jeff Mike, one of the 14 souls claimed by the icy depths. The news brought a bittersweet closure to his family. A single piece of the puzzle returned after years of agonizing uncertainty. For the other families, however, the wait for answers stretched on, a constant ache in their hearts. The solitary gravestone etched with all 15 names stands still against the relentless sea. It is a constant reminder of the missing, a stark monument to the vast, unforgiving mystery that swallowed them whole. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching and for your valuable suggestions. If you have any other story suggestions, feel free to submit them in the comments section. Thank you once again.